Hey, ioStux here. In case you haven't noticed in my past videos, I offer VOD reviews now. Okay, the way they work is you send me a replay code, I record myself talking over it, and then you get all of the knowledge of your regular coaching session, but, you know, without actually being there. And this video is actually going to be just that. Okay, so this is Carlos, he's one of my coachees, and he ordered a VOD review. So this isn't, you know, he's not here, I'm just talking to myself in this video, but I wanted to upload this so you can get a good idea of what these VOD reviews look like, and whether they might be something that you could take advantage of.
Hello, Mr. Carlos. I am super duper sorry that all of this took like way too fucking long. But I finally found some time to go over your replay. And luckily, no patch came out that wiped it, so I think we should be good. So, you wanted me to review Artis. I guess this is a Smurf account or something? As long as it's on your main rating, it should be fine. So, generally speaking, as Ash, you are in kind of a unique position because other characters are usually very one-dimensional in the way that they can generate value. So what that means is if you are playing someone like Widowmaker, for example, the only way that she can get value is by getting picks. Her ultimate is pretty much useless, her abilities are basically useless, and outside of that she doesn't really fulfill any functions. You know, it's kind of the same thing with Tracer, where her ultimate isn't really that amazing, you know, or you have characters like Sombra, where her damage output is basically non-existent, so, you know, she can't really get any picks, but her ultimate is really, really good in return. As Ashe, one of the reasons why she is so strong is that she can do both. She has both a very strong ultimate, but she also has decent pick potential. Okay, obviously her ultimate isn't as amazing as an EMP, and her pick potential isn't as amazing as that of a Widow, but just having that flexibility is really good, because it means that if the enemy team switches, then you can adjust your playstyle. So the way that you choose between what playstyle to go for largely depends on how you would rate your ability to get picks against the enemy team comp. So, for example, if the enemy team has a lot of characters that don't move very quickly or are exposed or like to take high ground or whatever, so they don't stand behind shields, against those comps you can get picks very easily. But if you are playing against characters that are very, very mobile, or they flank a lot, or they just beat you in a 1v1, then obviously it's not going to be that great. So let's take that and apply it to the enemy team comp, because if we don't know what kind of playstyle we need to follow in order to actually get value, then we don't really know how to win the game. So Widowmaker is kind of garbage for you, because in a 1v1 situation she has the clear advantage, so unless you're smurfing, she's not really a target you want to go for. Mercy is technically pickable, so I guess that speaks for going for picks. The tanks in general aren't really that relevant. That said, they don't have any dedicated shield tanks, which speaks for going for a pick-based playstyle, because it makes it easier to go picks. That said, that's only because they don't have any tanks that are really worth farming. If they had a Roadhog, for example, then that would make ult farming a lot easier. And then Zarya is just the off tank, so that doesn't really matter too much, because you can't really pick her. Ana is fairly easy to pick, because while she's scoping in, she's pretty slow, so not super duper difficult to land those shots. And then lastly, the Genji is very, very difficult to shoot, so the chances of you getting a pick on him consistently are very, very slim. So, looking at the enemy team comp, I would not really recommend to go for picks, except on maybe the Ana. So what that means is that your default playstyle should be to just pump out as much damage as you possibly can while playing as safe as you possibly can. And the only time you would deviate from that playstyle is if you see an opportunity to get a pick on the Ana. Okay, so if I hope that that makes sense, and we can continue and see how we apply that to the game. So the first thing to say here, obviously, is when you are playing a ranked game, it is very, very important that you leave spawn on time, because as I mentioned before, whether you go for picks or ultimates doesn't really matter. Either way, you want to start getting value as early as possible. Okay. So these first seconds are always very important, because this is where you're just scouting the comp. So you saw the Genji, you saw the Winston, so you can already say, okay, you know, this isn't looking like a super duper pick potential game. So your positioning here is actually good. You're not worrying too much about off angles. Okay. Ooh, actually, your aim is pretty decent. Now, we do need to talk about positioning. So, the most important thing to understand is that you always position around the map first before your teammates. So what that means is that you having a corner that you can play next to is more important than you standing right behind a tank. Okay, so if you are standing over here, you don't really have any cover. Okay, so if you look at yourself, especially from the enemy's perspective, there's nothing really that you can hide towards. You know, I mean, this right side is basically a dead end, and to the left side there's no cover either. Okay, so the general rule that I recommended in one of my videos was the McCree rule, where you basically need to ask yourself if everyone on the enemy team was a McCree who's using his ultimate. You know, there's just 6 McCrees using their ultimate. Would you survive? And right here, if this Ana was a McCree and he would use his ultimate, then, well, you would be fucked. You would it would basically depend on whether this Reinhardt would randomly shield for you, which you don't want to depend on. Okay, and to put this into more practical terms, let's say that this Genji, for example, he decides to jump on you. You know, the Winston and the Genji jump on you, and your healers should be able to out-heal that. But if you have no cover to go behind, then you're also going to take damage from the Ana, the Widowmaker, and the Zarya, and then that's going to be a little bit too much to handle. Okay, so the correct position here would be, instead of standing here, would be standing right here. Okay, now technically this means that you're a little bit more split from your front line, but having this natural cover, just having some form of corner to play around, is always your highest priority as a DPS player, so that you can position self-sufficiently. Okay, so you can use this to reload. Nice dynamite. Very good, now you're behind cover. Okay, slight potato aim. Okay, so right here we can already kind of evaluate. If you look at everyone's ult charge, Tracer at 76, Sig at 63, Mercy at 72, the enemy Monkey is even at 86%. You can see that you're kind of falling behind in ult charge right now, and that's mostly caused by you not focusing too much on shooting their tanks. The fastest way that you can get ult charge is just spamming headshots into the enemy Winston and the enemy Zarya, and landing headshots against tanks isn't really the most mechanically demanding. Like even players of a lower skill rating should be able to do that consistently with a little practice and enough playtime. So right now you're falling behind in ult charge. A good benchmark would be 1.5 minutes for one ultimate on like the higher end. If you're really good, then you can also get it in like 70 to 80 seconds, but 90 seconds is kind of the maximum. And at this current pace, you're looking at a 120-second ultimate, which is way too slow. Okay, right there, a couple more whiffs on the Ana. Okay. See, so right here, normally if you would go for a pick-based playstyle, then what you're doing here is correct. You are ignoring the enemy Winston because your chances of getting a pick on him are very low, obviously. But looking at the enemy team comp, since we're not really going for a pick-based playstyle, shooting the enemy Winston would actually be really good because he's free ult charge. You know, you can just spam him and throw dynamite at him. That said, though, and this is another important thing that you need to understand, especially as Ashe, is that as the enemy team comp changes, so does our playstyle change. So previously, the only real target we could go for picks on was the enemy Ana, but now they also have a McCree. So the reason why we couldn't 1v1 the Widowmaker that the enemy team had is because at long range, she just beats you. And at close range, you're going to feed. McCree doesn't really have that advantage. At long range, you should be able to win that 1v1. So now there's 2 people that you can pick, which means if you knew that, then continuing to fire here would be, you know, fair, because as you saw right there, there was the McCree. But if they didn't change, then just going for the Winston is the way to go. Okay, and another thing is if you would have focused the Winston, then you wouldn't be standing this far forward. Okay, you would be standing further in the back, and you would just shoot him, and that way he wouldn't be able to knock you across the map like this, and then you're super duper split. Granted, that was a pretty good play by him, so you know, it's not like you could have done much more there, but you kind of got yourself in that situation, which you want to avoid in the future. My nose is running so bad. It's terrible. Okay, so yeah, right now you are at 1 minute 40 seconds, so 100 seconds and still no ultimate. Nice. See, like your aim is like kinda inconsistent. It's like you're landing those headshots on squishies, but then for some reason you're making life super duper difficult for tanks. I think one important thing to understand is that when you're going for tanks, don't change the way that you aim. You know, like some people tend to get a little complacent and lazy when they're shooting at tanks because they think, oh, you know, this Winston is fucking huge, so I don't need to aim. You're always aiming at enemies' heads. So just because he has a big hitbox doesn't mean that you can stop aiming. But okay, so we finally have our Bob. Again, the pace is a little bit slow. We want to get a little bit faster. Okay. Okay. So now that you have your Bob, your playstyle changes. So obviously you don't really give a shit about getting ult charge. So there's you want to go to a purely pick focused playstyle, and you want to get rid of your Bob as quickly as possible, which means keeping track of the kill feed to see if you can find an opener. Right now you got a pick on the Emily Winston, so you have a numbers advantage. So obviously you shouldn't ult right now, but you need to keep an eye out. Okay. So you're positioned with your team, which is really good. The enemy Genji can't really do anything as long as you're staying with your team. If you were playing on this high ground, for example, right, which a lot of Ashe players like to do, they always like playing high ground, you would, you know, if the Genji dives you, who the fuck is supposed to help you? You're gonna die. Okay. So again, we have our ultimate. All we want to do is just find an opener for that ultimate. The earlier you can use it, the less time you give your teammates to waste their ultimates. Nice try on the McCree. Okay, good. See, so this is exactly what you want to avoid, because now you gave the enemy team the opportunity to engage. Generally speaking, enemies are always a little cautious about using their ultimates when the other team has already used their ultimates. It's very, very important that you're proactive. So earlier I told you that you shouldn't ult because the enemy Winston was dead. Okay, but eventually the enemy team is going to regroup. Okay, so right now, like, the enemy Mercy is still running out of spawn. Okay, but once the enemy is pushing around the corner, okay, basically as soon as you heard this Mercy Valk, okay, this is already a proactive play by the enemy team. So when Mercy Valk, when Mercy uses her Valk, what does that tell us? It means that the enemy team wants to engage, or rather, that's what they're going to think. You know, the Mercy wants to engage, and if the Mercy uses Valk, then these people say, oh, okay, you know, Mercy is Valking, you know, we're gonna go in, we're gonna go ham. Okay, so when that happens, as soon as you hear this, okay, this is your cue. And again, it doesn't have to be a Mercy ultimate. It has to be. It can be either like an obvious opportunity where, you know, you just see the enemy team is regrouped and you can throw your Bob in, or you can use it on as follow up on one of your teammates engaging. So, for example, if you're Reinhardt, not your Reinhardt, honestly, you don't really have that big of an engaged team. If you had like a Winston or a Hammond, then, you know, if your Hammond slams, then you can use your ultimate. Or like here, when someone uses an ultimate to engage, that's like kind of a soft ultimate, you know, so not a hard engage like a Sigma ultimate or a Zarya ultimate, because usually by the time they throw that ultimate out, you're kind of screwed. But soft ultimates, you know, so that would be Baptiste Window or Mercy Ultimate or Mara Coalescence, for example. You know, ultimates that kind of signify, like, that are going to tell you, okay, the enemy team is going to run over us now, but that isn't big enough to where, oh, okay, you know, they got that ultimate out, we're kind of screwed. So as soon as you heard that Valk, you needed to throw out your ultimate immediately. But instead of throwing out your ultimate as a response to the Valk, you're throwing it out as a response to the Genji ultimate. And this Bob positioning isn't really that amazing. Okay, because think about it this way, okay? So you're probably going to die. I mean, it's a nano-bladed Genji. If the enemy Genji uses nano-blade, unless your Mercy is, not your Mercy, your Ana is fucking insane and sleeps him, some people are going to die. So your mindset here needs to be, it shouldn't be, okay, what can I do against this Genji? Because the answer to that is nothing. It's a Zarya bubbled, Mercy Valk damage boosted, nano-boosted Genji, okay? Like, you guys are fucked. He can do whatever he wants. Your goal should be making sure that while he screws people over here, your team can screw people over there. So if we go back a little, let's see how we could have accomplished that. Okay, so the enemy team is coming in. Okay, I'm gonna pause when they use Valk. Right there they used Valk. Okay, so this is the cue, they're engaging. They used Valk. They're running around that corner, they're going in. Right here, all you need to do is you throw your Bob straight down there. Okay, and it would get stopped right around here. Okay, and then your Bob and this Tracer would completely fuck over the enemy backline. Okay? Because these people don't really... Like, this Zarya has... This looks like a 0 energy Zarya, actually. 6 energy. Okay, close enough. They don't really have enough damage to deal with the Bob. So as long as the Bob is here and the Tracer is here, kind of a tough situation for them to be in. So these 3 people are basically out of the fight. Okay? Ideally, you know, the Tracer might even be able to kill people, or your Bob might be able to kill people. Okay? And then maybe you can recover from the Genji Blade. Now this was a pretty big Genji Blade, but even if the Genji Blade was a little bit worse, let's just say that the Genji Blade was didn't kill the Mercy, so that's 2 kills, plus the Mercy could have rest someone, so that would only be a net 1 loss, which means that if these people were screwed over by your Bob, instead of, him just chilling here and getting slept and being kind of useless, maybe you could have won. Okay. But yeah, that was a pretty stacked blade. Now that said, another important thing to look at, the enemy team committed a lot. Okay, so Nano Blade in of itself is already a very, very inefficient ultimate. And just real quick, you might be wondering, okay, well, why the fuck is this coach telling me shit about Nano Blade? I'm playing Ashe. The reason why I'm explaining this to you is so that you understand ult economy better, and you can better get a better feeling on how future fights are going to play out. Okay, so Nano Blade is already a double ultimate, right? The enemy team is basically committing 2 ultimates. Okay, which means people are going to die. You can combine any 2 ultimates and people are going to die. That's just how it is. But it's obviously very inefficient in terms of ult use, because why use 2 ultimates to win a team fight if you can use 1? Winning a team fight with 1 Zarya grab is better than winning a team fight with Nano Blade. But not only did they use those 2 ultimates, they also used Mercy Bulk. So they basically used 3 ultimates to wipe you. Okay, and again, you can combine any 3 ultimates and you're going to die. So whenever you see something like this happen, whenever you see that the enemy team uses a bunch of ultimates, that should be like a big sigh of relief, and more importantly, it should give you a lot of confidence going into the next team fight. Now when you run out of spawn, what you should be thinking is, the enemy team just used 3 ultimates. They're very far behind. The only ultimates they have here are like, okay, they have a Zarya ultimate, I guess, but what follow up, and they have a McCree ultimate, which is kind of garbage. Okay, so there's really nothing you have to worry about except maybe the Zarya ultimate, which again depends on her getting energy, but by the time she has energy, the team fight might already be over. So it's important that you play with confidence or you're going to end. Yeah, okay, so you don't want to do this. Right here, you need to stay behind your tanks. Okay, this is one of those examples where I said earlier here how a lot of Ashe players are going to go up here, but high ground isn't actually that amazing in this situation because you're going to get very isolated from your team, and more importantly, look at who joins you. Okay, the Mercy, and this is really, really, really aids for your teammates, because now you are up here and your Mercy is up here, and this Ana needs to like deal with all of this shit down here. She's basically left alone. So when you are going for a retake, it is better to stay with your team, because that way you don't isolate yourself, you're not going to get picked, you're not giving them an easy dive opportunity. And that counts doubly so because they are playing dive. Okay, so they have a Winston and a Genji. They're basically just waiting for someone to isolate themselves and go in for the engage. So right here, the enemy team is kind of dumb. If these 3 people, if the Winston, the Genji, and the Mercy, if they would have just committed to you, like in a high-level environment, for example, you would have been blown up well before the Mercy had a chance to heal you up. But okay, now you're back with your team. Okay. By the way, that's another thing, kind of a little piece of info as Ashe. When you are playing with your team and you get dove, then you don't want to scope in. You just want to stay at full movement speed, out of scope, and use your left click. The damage isn't going to be that amazing, of course, but if your teammates also shoot them, then it's going to be good enough to defend yourself. And more importantly, moving at full speed is really, really important to stay alive. So what you did there is actually good. Okay. Okay, right here you... Did your Mercy die? Where's your Mercy? Okay. I mean, it's okay, even if you die here, it doesn't really matter. Your teammates are gonna win. As long as your Mercy is focusing on the rest of your team, this death doesn't really matter. Again, but ideally you shouldn't have even been up on that high ground with the Mercy. You should have just joined your tanks straight away and then engage and retake with them. But you have been given a second opportunity, so good for you. Okay, 15 seconds, which means this is going to be an overtime recontest. Just join your team, make sure you don't die. Play for picks. So when the round is almost over, obviously you need to play for picks because you're not going to get your ultimate. So what I would have done here, actually, so if we go back a little, is this would be a situation where using your coach gun to get up on this high ground would actually be pretty valuable. Of course, it's still a risk, because if the Genji or the D.Va or whatever jump you, then you're kind of screwed. But if you play over here, then you should be able to like fall down and spam X really, really hard, and then maybe the Ana is going to turn around. Okay. Oh, wow. That's, I want to look at that in slow motion. Oh! He got shit on so hard. This is why I love doing this job. It's moments like that. Like, there's nothing he did wrong. Literally nothing. But he just got fucking demolished. Okay. So at this point, this is basically deathmatch. All you need to do here is just focus squishies. And then either you win or you don't. Okay, don't use your ultimate here. This yeah. So again, this is another important thing. Kill feed tracking. When you are at such a big disadvantage, you know, your Sigma died, your Roadhog died. Your Roadhog did get rest, but at this point you guys have so little momentum. You know, you guys have basically negative momentum. You're falling back. I wouldn't really count on this fight being salvageable. Basically, the more scuffed your ultimate is, the lower the chances of it killing a bunch of people. So if you look at the kill feed and you see that your teammates are dying, then you only want to use your ultimate if it's like a really perfect ultimate and you know that it's going to get a whole lot of value. Okay, but this isn't you using your ultimate because you see a super duper amazing opportunity and you're like, yes, this is going to kill a bunch of people, you know, I need to ult here. This is you basically saying, you know, I'm just going to throw out my ultimate and before I die, and then maybe my teammates can carry me. That's not the mindset you want to have. Okay, the bigger your numbers advantage, the more awesome your ultimate needs to be in order for it to be worth being used. Okay, but I mean, who knows? Maybe your teammates are going to carry you. Okay, they don't. See, so now that ultimate is kind of wasted. And the enemy team used Nano Boost as well, so that's something that you could have played around. You decide to switch to Sombra. That's okay. I'm assuming this is a counter pick against the enemy team comp. And seeing that they have a Doomfist, D.Va, and Genji, it's not actually a terrible counter pick. And you also used it immediately after you used your Bob. That said, actually, okay, no. So I used the word counter pick. That's actually incorrect. We don't really want to counter pick because the enemies you play against are all trash and they don't deserve to be countered. What I should have said is that the Sombra pick is like an easy high value pick, if that makes sense. Okay, so against the enemy team comp, it is easy for you to get value. You don't really counter them, but they make it easy for you to get value. It is a little bit unfortunate that Doomfist swapped off, but you know, it's okay. Not much you can do. They still have a D.Va and a Genji, so it should be decently high value. Okay. So normally the way that you would play D.Va in a high elo kind of environment is you would go for hacks on like high value targets and then your teammates could engage on those hacks. You can't hack people proactively in a solo queue environment because you can't rely on people following up. So the only way that you are going to get value out of your hack in low elo is either A, for solo kills, so you know, I don't know, you know, hacking the enemy Ana and then trying to kill her because she's super duper split. To farm ult charge, so for example, hacking a Roadhog so you can just spam damage into him without worrying about getting hooked. Or, and this is by far the most common use for Sombra hack in solo queue, is you can use it to screw over people who are flying in. So you can just be patient, chill, farm your ult charge, and the moment the enemy Genji or the enemy D.Va fly in, you know, they don't want to stay in forever. Eventually they want to go out, but then bam, you hack them and they're in the middle of your team without any abilities. Okay, so using your hack reactively, basically. I guess the best summary I can give you, although this won't mean much to you, is the way you use Sombra hack in low elo solo queue is basically identical to the way that you use Sigma Rock at any level of play. And then outside of that, obviously, your main priority as Sombra, because your EMP is fucking busted, is always farm as much EMP as you possibly can. And the best way to do that is to be aware of who on the enemy team is going to give you a lot of ult charge. You don't have, like, a Roadhog, so it means that both tanks have armor, so you're kind of limited in the ult charge that you can get. Generally speaking, though, a hack D.Va is higher priority than a Reinhardt, because the D.Va has a larger headshot hitbox than the Reinhardt. So yeah, see, like that hack is good, very clean tracking, super duper nice. That said though, see, this is one of those situations where going for a reactive hack would have gotten you a lot of value. Okay, so you went for the ult charge hack on the D.Va, and again, this hack is perfectly fine. I just want to showcase this as an example of how hacking an enemy when they engage would be like super high value. So if that Genji would have been hacked, you know, he would basically just insta-die. Good, translocate, nice. Okay. Oh, that's unfortunate that you ran out of ammo, but actually no, it isn't unfortunate. I think you just forgot to reload, didn't you? You hack here, he jumps you, you translocate. You translocate a little late. Ideally you want to translocate before taking damage. Okay, yeah, you just didn't reload. This isn't you being unlucky, this is kind of a whiff. Not that it matters, this teamfight is lost anyways. Also shooting here with 6 HP is very bold. I would just go into stealth, take a health pack, and then make sure that you can keep spamming. You're still trying a little bit too hard to like win teamfights on your own. The only thing you need to remember is how does my character get value? And then execute that at every single possible moment. Okay, so for you, you're purely ult based as Sombra, solo queue. You just want to focus on your ult charge. Yeah, see, like even right here, your Roadhog was already dead, which means I wouldn't really count on you guys winning this team fight. Now you can jump on the payload and maybe waste a few more seconds of the enemy team, or you can not jump on the payload and then get the remaining 25% for your ultimate and then use that to win the next team fight. Right there I would have just prioritized the ult charge personally. Okay. Yes, the replay viewer, fast as ever. So right now we just want to get the last bit of our ult charge, and you need to do it quickly so that the enemy team doesn't engage. So right here, against the D.Va, go for the hack first, and then deal the damage. The only time you do that without a hack is if there's nothing really that's worth hacking. Okay, nice try, but now we have our EMP. So there's two ways to use EMP. You can do it the, I guess, kind of newbie way, where you just throw your translocator in and then you EMP. The problem with that is that what happens in most cases is, obviously it's very easy to land a big EMP that way, but you're also going to die most of the time, and it is not worth it to land a big EMP and then just to die. Generally speaking, the way that you want to use your EMP is you want to stealth in, unstealth, obviously place your translocator beforehand, unstealth, use your ultimate, deal as much damage as you can, and then get out with your translocator. And this is exactly not what you want to do. Okay. So in this case, you're not getting punished, obviously. But as you climb into higher ratings, you are going to get absolutely shit on for doing stuff like this. The reason being why this changes in high elo is that in low elo, people are very scared when they get hacked or when they get EMP'd. You know, they kind of go into a survival mode. But in high elo, like that Reinhardt, for example, he would have realized, okay, my shield is gone anyway, so I might as well just go in and swing at people, which means you're going to get overrun and you're going to die, and that playstyle just doesn't scale super well into high elo. Okay, this is a reset. Also, your ultimate was like a little bit late. If you would have used it earlier, then your Winston wouldn't have died. Back to Ashe. Okay, slight whiffs. Your flicks are also a little diagonal. If the enemies are just strafing, like if they're not jumping, then you want your flicks to be perfectly horizontal. It's much more consistent than going for these like do you see how your crosshair is always either to the bottom left or to the bottom right for the enemy? Just keep it at head level. Okay. You have dynamite, use it on cooldown. Very good. Don't worry about contesting. See, this is what I mean. Like, against the enemy comp, Ashe is like, you know, you can't really go for picks. Like, there's no easy pick on the enemy team except maybe the Ana, but the only way you can reach the Ana is if you go into a position where you're just going to insta-die. Nice. Exactly. Against the Genji, don't scope in. That's a mistake that a lot of beginner Ana players do. Okay. Well, time flies by when you're having fun. This would normally be the part in a session where I would ask you whether you had any questions, but obviously with the VOD reviews, that's not how it's done. That said, though, you know that if you have any questions about any part of this review, you can always send me a DM on Discord, ideally with a timestamp so that I know what you're talking about, in order to summarize everything. So, generally speaking, most characters are either pick-oriented, follow-up-oriented, or ult-oriented, Ashe being pick-oriented and ult-oriented. If a character has multiple playstyles that give them value, you need to look at the enemy team comp, you need to look at your team comp, and you need to look at the map, and you need to make an objective assessment about which playstyle is going to get value the easiest. Okay, you don't worry about what gets you the most value, just what gets you enough value to win the game the easiest. And then you need to play around that. With Sombra, quick TLDR, the most consistent way to get value out of your hacks is to wait for the enemy team to go in and then hack them, so that they're in the middle of your team and they are kind of screwed. With your ultimate, try not to go in with Translocator. Try to use it to get out after ultimate rather than going in. As Ashe, make sure that you consistently play around cover, because cover is not going to move away, whereas your teammates might. And yeah, honestly, that's basically it. Your aim is a little inconsistent, but that's mostly a technique thing. It's very important that when the enemy isn't jumping, that you keep your crosshairs at head level, because once the crosshair is at head level, you don't really have to worry about anything else. But yeah, I think we're done here. I think I've said everything that I needed to say. If you have any questions, you can always send me a DM on Discord, and I wish you the best of luck.